Kevin, welcome back to the program. Great to have you here.
Well, thanks, Rick. It's always a pleasure to be here.
So, a lot has been happening with this special military operation in Ukraine. We're not really hearing much about it in the mainstream media or any media really over here. It seems like uh, that whole conflict is now passe. People just don't want to hear about it, or at least the media doesn't seem to want to tell us much about what's going on. But we have seen some pretty serious developments over the past couple of weeks. When you were last on, Ukraine had launched a series of drone attacks. Where are we at with that? Has that continued?
Well, it actually stopped after that. After all the drones they shot, it was like 6 Storm Shadow missiles all shot down. Russia hit Kiev, Dnipropetrovsk, Ukrainian Kherson, and Odessa with massive drone strikes and missile strikes, took out a lot of military infrastructure. And it got quiet until 3 o'clock this afternoon. Ukraine shot one U.S. ATACMS long-range missile at the Crimean Bridge, and it was shot down right up about here over the Azov Sea. And that's all that's happened in the last week. My sources say that they believe Ukraine is waiting until the new year, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, to maybe launch another massive attack. They're kind of gathering what they have left and trying to get some things from the West and make another big attack.
And what's your assessment of that? Is that we've had a discussion about this, and I guess it's your belief and what you're being told that might be sort of a PR strategy as well, because Zelensky needs a win. He needs to show some forward momentum in order to secure ongoing funding from the United States and the EU. Where do things sit with that?
Well, the EU has put together a large package of aid. I don't remember exactly what it was. I saw this a couple days ago, something like $50 billion equivalent, but they've made it contingent on the US approving their $68 billion package, which, as you know, is held up in the Republican House right now. The Republicans are saying, well, if we get our border money to protect us from Mexico, then we'll think about approving it. So I don't know. I have doubts that the U.S. will actually approve more aid. I don't think the Republicans are going to do that. Going into an election year, people are tired of seeing their money spent to support not only Ukraine, but Israel as well. And I think it's, pretty much over as far as big packages of aid.
So a lot of these attacks might be acts of hopeful self-preservation on the part of Mr. Zelensky, who may actually find himself in a bit of trouble if he's not successful with his military efforts.
Yeah, well, his commander in chief. This always throws me because, of course, in the U.S. and in Russia, the commander in chief of the armed forces is the president. But apparently in Ukraine, it's not. He actually has a commander in chief, and he found bugs in his office. And of course, he's blaming Zelensky for bugging his office. So they've got political things going on there as well. Klitschko, the mayor of Kiev, is running his mouth. He isn't supportive of the continued fighting anymore. So I think things are just unraveling for Zelensky.
There are other signs that things may be unraveling, and I don't know if you've seen this, so I'll just comment on it. There was video of a Ukrainian soldier walking into a Ukrainian town council meeting. I believe it was in Kiev, and then he stood there.
Up.
And and he just lobbed a couple of grenades in front of himself with the room full of other people, and they detonated. It was horrifying to see it, but also
Yeah.
I think an example of how everything is beginning to fall apart over there.
Well, the third one went off. He was holding it, and he killed himself.
Yeah. So, uh, not looking good on that front. And we've also got the public relations war raging. I'm seeing, as I say, very little in the way of media reports overall, but there have been reports of mouse fever devastating Russian troops. That didn't have the ring of truth to it for me. There may be some mouse fever, but on the scale that it's being reported, I just can't see it. What's your assessment?
Pure propaganda. Um, I know a lot of guys that are fighting up on the front. I talk to them regularly. Um, you know, Texas, Donbass, Bentley is up in Donbass. We know people up and down the line, and no reports whatsoever.
Yeah, it, because that illness, you have to be exposed essentially to mouse droppings. It's bacteria. I just can't see something like that spreading really widely quickly unless it gets into the food supply someplace. But it just didn't seem like a very, very credible information. And yet it's beginning to find its way out into the media today.
Well, especially this time of year, it's cold up there. There's snow on the ground, below zero temperatures. So I don't buy that at all.
And that's what the media reports were saying as well. It was like the other reason it's spreading is because the Russian troops have not been properly equipped with winter gear and they're not getting any medical attention, which also just the wording of it seemed a little hard to believe.
You know, I know the guys are well equipped, and Russia is not skimping on what they're giving them. Even locally here, we have women who are sewing, you know, camouflage nets and coats and scarves, and the guys are not wanting for winter equipment here. For me, what I see when I see these guys out there is, remember growing up seeing the old Soviet movies, the guys in the white snowsuits and snowshoes. This is really kind of what it's like.
Putin had that year-end news conference where he was almost 3 hours where he sat there
Yep.
and just answered questions from people. I watched a lot of that, and man, I'll tell you, it was pretty impressive. He is a strong leader, and he seems supremely confident in where he's at with all of this.
And he does not get those questions in advance, and he's answering them off the top of his head.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly right.
Every year, once a year.
Yeah. And, he questions about the economy, culture, borders, immigration. He was, as he went down all these issues, most of the issues are the same kinds of issues we're facing here in North
Sure.
America. And the answers he's giving are the answers I wish our leaders were giving over here. It was like, yeah, strong borders, controlled immigration, maintain your national identity. And he's also talking about energy, which I think is a key thing because he spoke about natural gas and oil. It's still flowing. Russia is still in a very strong position economically because of that. But over here, that no wonder the money is drying up. We don't have a good
Yeah.
energy policy here in North America. Just give me your thoughts.
Yeah. All these sanctions have been great for the Russian economy. We had a little bit of inflation this year, 4.5%. Crimea was a little bit higher, but they've taken steps at the federal level to bring it back down the first of the year to that same 4 to 4.5%. The GDP is growing here, 5-6%. And, if this is what, they talk about authoritarian leadership. If this is what authoritarian leadership is, I'm all for it. The guy is for his people. He takes care of the people. He's raised pensions and social payments to people starting the first of the year. Disabled people get a raise. They're giving a free house to any woman who has 3 children by her husband. So, and and they make payments to these women for every child they produce. But they control it. It isn't, here's some money and you can go buy a car or drugs or alcohol. They put the money into an account. And if you buy something for your child, clothing, even a house, if you put that money towards it for the child to live in, then you take the receipts to the government and they give you the money then. So, everything here has the social programs are controlled so the money isn't wasted. People can't take advantage of it.
Now, when you say that, people here might instantly have alarm bells go off because you'll hear social credit score, social credit program. Um, how widespread or how integrated is that into the economy there? Is that targeted specifically just at the social programs? That doesn't extend out into the rest of the economy where people are working, getting a paycheck. They still have the freedom, I assume, to go out and make purchases freely.
Yeah, they can make purchases freely. And in fact, they raise the minimum wage. So, they just take care of their people. They've eliminated pensioners paying commissions if they need social services, if they need a taxi ride or they go looking for a house. They're now exempt from all the commissions that people charge.
Mm-hmm. Just to bring it back again to these drone attacks, there was also
Yeah.
a report just overnight that Russia had launched a massive drone attack against Ukraine. I believe some of those drones were directed at Kiev. The Ukrainian forces are saying they shot down 34 out of 35 of them. Have you heard anything about that yourself, or do you have any information that you can add?
You know, anytime you hear the Ukrainian media say that they shot down much of anything, we have a joke here. We shoot 6 missiles and they shoot, 8 of them down. And, but I have a relative who lives in Dnipropetrovsk, and there were drones and missile strikes on Dnipro this past week, and they hit military targets. They may be shooting them down, but they're shooting them down by having the missiles hit their air defenses and their ammunition supplies.
Right.
So they struck Kiev, Dnipropetrovsk, Odessa, Ukrainian Kherson, and Kharkiv.
When Putin was answering all those questions in his year-end interview and news conference, he made reference to what was going on in Gaza, and he specifically said, the kind of atrocities that you're seeing in Gaza, you're not seeing in Ukraine. And can you
Yes.
speak to the targeted nature of what the Russian forces are doing?
Yeah, I hear a lot of feedback out of the West of why doesn't Putin just go in and wipe out the Ukrainian forces like the United States would do? And he's been very specific from the beginning of this special military operation of the military is to be conscious of the infrastructure and the civilians. So they go very slowly. They're very careful not to hit civilian infrastructure. No, unfortunately, it's war. Some civilians get killed, in Ukraine as well, but they minimize that. They're doing this house to house, street by street fighting specifically to avoid those sorts of things. And as what we're seeing is every time the Ukrainians think that Russia is going to make an offensive attack, they're evacuating citizens anyway at this point. Now, they started out originally where they would go into a hospital and move the patients onto a floor and hide behind them. And, or apartment buildings, they'd put the people down in the basement, lock them in, and then they'd shoot from the apartment buildings. And then, of course, Russia strikes that building and, some civilians get injured. And, but Russia's being very conscious of that.
Mm-hmm. So this is the kind of war where I think when either side goes on the offensive, they really put their soldiers at extreme risk. It's the advancing forces that are most exposed.
Yes.
And that's when they kind of get thrown into a meat grinder either way. So is Putin's strategy here also one of caution so that he can preserve and protect and minimize losses on his side?
Yeah. The military losses as well. There's very few losses compared to what Ukraine's experiencing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still an 8-to-1, 10-to-1 ratio.
And when we talk about losses, we're also talking about technology and drones and the capabilities to attack with them and defend against them. And I guess you have had the opportunity to see some of the technology and hardware up close that Russia is using to defend against drone attacks. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, with the couple of strikes on the Crimean Bridge and the couple of attempted strikes on the Black Sea Fleet, is what they've done is they've rolled out a bunch of technology to prevent attacks. One of the things that we see around here often is if you go to Sevastopol, the GPS systems in your phone and your car will go out totally. They just do not work. You go to Simferopol, the capital of Crimea. Again, your GPS does not work. The satellites are out or they jam them, and all of a sudden you're driving down the road and you look in your map, you're 20 kilometers away, 10 miles away in the middle of a field on your map. So GPS is useless in the major areas here. When we go across the bridge right now, all the GPS goes out about 10 miles on either side of the bridge, and there's just no navigation. So that's one thing. Now on the bridge, they've sunk some ships by the mouth of the bridge. So it's a very narrow passage now that anything can go through to get to the bridge. And this is to prevent attacks by the sea-based drones. And then they have sea netting as well. They have catch traps. And when you're going over the bridge, it's actually real impressive because you can see these things. They're great big concrete, I don't know, almost like giant concrete anchors that they've dropped in there. And it blocks the pilings of the bridges and to prevent sky-based drone attacks. They have an awful lot of radar systems out there. They have surface to air missiles, and they have this really cool smoke truck. It's called a TD3A, and this is the beast right here. This truck, they can put various things in it, but as what they've loaded it with is chemicals to make a smoke that has a metal flake in it. And this thing, it uses actually a MiG-13 jet engine to push this smoke out of it. And it holds, it has one 2,500 liter tank and a 900 liter tank for the chemicals. And this thing can pump out this smoke for a kilometer in range in about 90 seconds. This thing takes 5 minutes to deploy and 90 seconds to fire the system up, and it can put out a 1 kilometer long stretch of smoke. And they cover the bridge, they cover Sevastopol Bay with total fog whenever they detect that there's incoming missiles or drones. Now, I've seen some analysts in the West say, well, yeah, it won't work against infrared. The metal flake reflects the infrared, so you can't visually see anything, and you can't see it through the infrared.
And I
And
guess that's the strategy, because they have guys flying these drones who are wearing those first person view goggles, right? Virtual
yeah,
reality goggles, and they're flying like this and looking where they're going.
yeah. Now, granted, you could have coordinates of where like the bridge is, but if the GPS isn't working, you can't fly by the coordinates either. So I saw a UK analyst say, well, yeah, but they have thermal heads on them and they can, detect like the cars going across. The chemicals they're mixing in this beast prevent those attacks as well. So basically the drones and the missiles are blind. So
So
it's pretty cool.
so you combine that with, well, how do they target the drones to take them down if there's no GPS? Do you have any idea how those systems work? Is it
You
like,
know, they're taking most of them out way up over in here that are towards the bridge. So they've got equipment up over in here and up in this, these strips up in here. Up in here. And so they're catching them long before they ever get to the bay or the bridge. Now, if they get near the bridge, I can't talk too much about what they've got there, but they're using a variety of different radar systems. So they can still see the drones in the sky. And they're catching them early enough out there that they can deploy these trucks, they can get the smoke going on the bridge and cover that entire bridge or cover the entire Sevastopol Bay before they ever get near.
yeah,
But even
and
over by Sevastopol, over here, they're shooting them down way out here in the Black Sea.
yeah, those are some of the other reports we're seeing here in the West, is that Ukraine has this jamming technology that they're using to um, take down Russian drones, but they're not talking at all about the smoke screens or just taking down the GPS or any of what you just mentioned. In any of the reports that I've heard, it doesn't seem to me like Ukraine has the upper hand on the drones.
I don't think they do. They may have some electronic warfare systems. I'm sure the West has them. They've probably given them some. But, we talk about here of, what do we have the other day when I was talking to you, 30 some drones as a massive attack. But, every drone attack from Russia on Ukraine is 50, 75, 100 drones. And this can go on for 3-4 days. They have no shortage of drones. We're in full production in Russia. Military equipment is coming off the line, missiles, tanks. We've got a surplus of equipment at this point. So, we can throw, like I say, 50 to 100 drones for every 20 or 30 that they're throwing this way or more.
Drone warfare. This has changed warfare. It's already happening, and it is clearly the trend moving forward into the future. We've seen just this week the Canadian military is spending billions of dollars, 2.5 billion, small military budget here, to acquire a few drones, but not the kinds of drones that we're talking about here. Those are suicide drones that fly in and um, perform kamikaze missions where they self-destruct and blow up, crash into their targets. we're talking about in Canada, these larger um,
Like the
turboprop,
surveillance ones. Yeah.
yeah, surveillance ones. These ones carry weapons payloads. They can stay up in the air for like 28 hours. They're flown from remote locations. In this
Hmm.
case, probably from Ottawa. They'll have pilots in a room flying these things around. The United States has been using them for years. I'm sure Russia has them as well. Um, where do you see warfare like this going, and how extensive is this? Because I think in people's minds, because we have so many Hollywood movies, people don't have an accurate picture of what warfare today is really like. There, I think people still think it's like it was more back in World War II with tanks and guys running around with machine guns and Saving Private Ryan style warfare.
Yeah, on the front lines, there's multiple lines of defense, whether you're on offense or defense. And the guys on the front are shooting bullets house to house. They're covered by artillery, a little further back. So there's still a lot of that going on. Um, I rarely hear of tank battles. I see a lot of tanks going to Ukraine, but what they're doing with them, I'm not really sure. Um, but the drone warfare, and even though Ukraine may have some of these electronic warfare systems to bring drones down, it's a technique that Russia can afford to do because they have the drones and the missiles. They send this swarm of geranium drones, and they're kind of a small to mid-sized drone. They'll send this whole swarm in, and they watch for where the systems are that are taking them down, whether it's air defense, the electronic warfare. And then what follows that, when they've detected that, is a Kinjal missile that takes it out. So Russia takes them out as quickly as they can use them. And, this is the kind of warfare that's going on. Now, Ukraine, you know, they send a bunch of drones or they send a few missiles. Sometimes they send drones and missiles, like last week, 30 drones, 6 missiles. And they're trying to do the same thing. They're trying to find out where Russia has their air defense systems, and they're all on trucks. So they move constantly. And, they just aren't as adept at detecting them because they don't have the supply that Russia has.
And tank warfare, you mentioned tanks, that kind of warfare is not as effective as it used to be, because you have this really expensive tank, this huge piece of military hardware rolling across the country, the landscape, down a road or whatever, and then a drone worth maybe even a few $1,000s can come in and take out that tank.
Drop a grenade down the hatch. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've actually seen Ukraine using commercial drones. I mean, go to Best Buy and buy yourself a drone.
Yeah.
And they tie a hand grenade to it and they'll fly it over it and, tilt the camera tilt on it and the grenade drops. And
Changing the nature of warfare for sure. And we did a couple of shows this past week about artificial intelligence, and that's destined to change things too. I mean, I didn't prime you for any kind of comment on AI, but I've been fascinated with what's happening on that front, watching a lot of videos and reading a lot about it in the past week. That actually scares the living daylights out of me, because pretty soon these drones will actually be automated and will be making decisions, even on kills in the field. So that's probably going to
yeah.
happen sooner rather than later, too.
And there's some of that going on right now. They can program these drones, go here, do this, and they have the cameras. If they see a certain thing, they can divert to other locations and stuff. I'm actually doing a series on AI for one of my channels. Probably won't get it released until late January or February. But I think a lot of the hype about AI taking over the world and killing all the humans is science fiction at this point. I am doing a lot of research on it. I've got a little background in the AI as well. But there's targeted AI right now. But what people have to remember is what you get out of like Chat GPT is it's a large language model and it's only feeding you back what it knows. It isn't at this point thinking, it doesn't have the emotion or the biological connection that, you think about it. When we make decisions, it isn't all what we see, it's also what we hear, what we feel. So it's got a long ways to go.
Yeah, there is still a big disconnect there. I've seen this guy Mo Gadot. He's an ex Google AI developer. The head of their one of their AI departments doesn't work there
Yeah.
anymore, but he wrote some books, or a book anyway. And he's been doing the podcast circuit. And the way he speaks is alarming because he refers to AI as they, as though it is alive. It's a new life form. That's really what he's leading people to believe. Your view on that? And we did another show on this with Brendan, and we had Jeff Evely from Veterans for Freedom on, and you know Jeff says, and we had Ian Nunn on too.
Yeah.
Their assessment is it's not alive. It's and this sounds like maybe it's a lot of hype from Mr. Godot, maybe to sell more
Yeah.
books. I don't know.
Yeah. I fall more along the lines of Andrew Nigg from Stanford. He's into AI as well, very deeply. And, he's got the same attitude. It's not alive. And most AI is pretty focused. When you think about Chat GPT, everyone, that's where they go. When they say, look what it can write a computer program, it'll put programmers out of business.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, yeah, it probably will. But again, it's only spitting back what this large language model it has in it. It searches through this entire database and spits stuff out. It's kind of at the trained monkey stage. Put 100 monkeys in a room and one of them is going to produce a novel. Yeah, they're real good at what they're meant to do. Your car, if you have an AI driving car, it's good at driving, but it's certainly not going to take your job from you.
I don't know. Not yet.
Not yet.
I do see it being very disruptive to the economy in the years ahead, and probably
I
sooner
agree
rather
it
than
will
later.
be.
But that doesn't scare me because as people are displaced from their jobs, I see AI increasing efficiencies, increasing productivity, raising the standard of living for all people by decreasing the price of all kinds of different goods and services that we need to survive and prosper. And then people will move on and do other kinds of work that maybe will be more value added, just the way the assembly line did when they made automobiles more affordable for people.
Yeah, I mean, when they automated assembly lines, it put some people out of business, put some people out of work, but they went on and did other things. It's not going to eliminate a lot of the creative jobs. You're not going to see AI doing the news. An AI robot isn't going to take over your position at Maverick News. Um,
Actually, there
it
are some, well, yes and no. It's what I do see already happening is aggregated news sites where
Yeah,
AI is being used to basically skim off stories and then spin the scripts so that they're written differently. And then it spits it back out into an aggregated news site, which is in itself disruptive because it's going to make it more difficult to make a living as a journalist. You're only going to probably end up with some of the top journalists surviving because they'll be the primary producers. But even then,
yeah,
I think we're getting into copyright issues And we're getting a little off topic here, talking about AI now because it's such
Yeah.
an interesting subject. But yeah, I mean,
But think
copyright
about
itself is an issue.
yeah, but think about the AI aggregating. It has to have something to aggregate. Somebody's got to write
Right.
that.
Right.
So, yes, it will change the face of journalism, but it isn't going to totally eliminate journalists.
Yeah.
And you won't get the kind of discussion we're having with an AI bot.
Yeah. You probably get something a lot more intelligent.
Maybe better looking too.
Yes, that's true. That is absolutely true. In
Yeah.
fact, I saw an AI generated image of Donald Trump morphed into Abraham Lincoln overnight. And I thought, well, you see, there you go. That conspiracy theory about Abe Lincoln still being alive. Now it's
There you
conspiracy
go.
reality,
Yeah.
right? It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, do you have some other videos? I think maybe you have some other videos or images lined up of
Yeah,
some
I
of this
can
technology being
I can
used,
show you some of this
some drone stuff.
technology.
Yeah.
This is actually here in Crimea. So what we've got here is we've got the TD3A putting out smoke. We've got a missile system in the background, number 20 back there. Number 2 is the smoke generator. And somewhere in this cloud of smoke, you've got radar systems, you've got other missile systems. So, this is actually at working here in Crimea. And this was, I'll take the sound down on this. I'm not going to translate it for you. It's basically the system working over the bridge, and you can see the trucks going along the bridge and putting out this smoke. So this is the way it starts to come out, but it will cover that entire bridge in just minutes. So you can see the systems working off the side there. So they've got these trucks parked all over the place.
That's pretty amazing. That is
Yeah.
amazing.
And this is actually from the company that makes this thing. And this is like a 6-minute video. It's just firing up here. And I'll fast forward it a bit. And, there you're looking at half a mile of this thing. And we go further forward here. This thing's got a mile and a half covered there. It's a 1 kilometer minimum coverage, which is 2.2 miles.
Wow.
So, and this is in a 6-minute video. That's how far that thing spread.
You know what? It's coming to mind right now. I know what people are going to say. I told you chemtrails are real.
Yeah, there you go. Chemtrails. It is chemical.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
But is it changing the climate or making it rain?
I don't know. We've been rainy for the last week, but that's pretty normal this time of year.
So so you're thinking then as we head into the Christmas season and into New Year's, the word on the street is that Ukraine might be building up to something to make a bit of a splash, um, to try and get some attention and secure more funding by securing a win.
Yeah, on Crimea specifically. They're constantly up along that Kherson Donbass line. It's a daily thing those guys go through. I wouldn't want to be them. I talk to Russell Bentley all the time, and it's a constant ongoing thing there. Drones flying over, them shooting drones back, the artillery. It's a regular war zone up that way. But what they aren't making any progress in those regions, and they're expecting a Russian offensive up there. So what we expect is, the big splash would be Crimea.
Yeah, and I guess that's the other thing is when last we spoke, we had seen or you had seen and reported that there were a lot of troop movements in your area, I guess, and some adjacent areas, and Russian troops kind of moving into positions where they might be in place to launch offensives, and then Ukrainian troops repositioning into more defensive postures and
Yeah.
surrounding key strategic areas like Kiev.
Yeah.
So, are we still in that pattern right now?
Yeah, we haven't seen anything moving around Crimea in the last week or so. But what I'm seeing from some of my sources in Ukraine is that they're um, really kind of trying to build a three-line defense on the west side of the Dnieper River. And they're moving a lot of their air defenses and stuff up into Kiev.
And that seems to be the strategy that's used these days. The new form of warfare is three lines of defense. Can you explain how that works?
I have no clue.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
that's outside of my realm. Yeah, you'll have to ask
just
Scott Ritter that one.
I've
Yeah,
heard many references to that, and when they punch through one line, it's very difficult to penetrate the three line defense systems, and both sides seem to use that strategy. So
yeah,
we'll definitely be keeping an eye on what goes on, and we are at the end of the year, so um, if everything we've been hearing is it holds, we'll probably see some serious developments in within the next week or two. Um,
yeah.
yeah. Anything else we should focus on here today, or think that maybe we're missing, Kevin, or have we covered the bases?
I think we've covered the bases.
All right.
I think
Well,
we hit
folks,
everything we were going to. Yep.
and once again, tell people how they can find your work, Kevin.
Well, you can reach me at the website on the screen, infowars.press, or you can find my more social channel where we do interviews, life in Crimea, at americancrimea.site. And that's just American Crimea, one word, .site.
All right. More truth from Kevin Micheliti. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us
It
on
was
the
my
program.
pleasure.